baby, you coming down? Got the heat on down here. I don't think I have much time left with him. So, I don't know if he'll last the summer. I'm gonna do everything I can to make him comfortable while he's here. We had a nap in the sun earlier today. He was quite happy about that. So, we'll have another one tomorrow. Maybe a few. Alrighty, if you're new to my live channel, I'm gonna sit here, paint this shit, and listen to something. You're welcome to stop in every once in a while, see how it's going. Which one was that? Let's use the flesh one first. Medium flesh. I know, thrilling. Try to control your excitement here, okay, guys? Okay. This one I'm calling done. It's not perfect, but it's cute enough for somebody. Anything fully finished with their colors?
It's deadlier than you think. Yeah, if you count up all of the deaths across the entire film canon, it's way higher than you expect. There's almost too many deaths to keep track of, but someone's got to do it. Hello, internets! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's been ruining your childhood for over 10 years. Yeah, in case you missed it, this June is the 10-year anniversary of Film Theory. We have something really cool planned for later in the year that we just couldn't quite get done in time, so keep your eye out for that. But in the meantime, I wanted to take a look back at one of the most popular videos we've ever done on the channel, our Disney Death Count series. Yeah, in case you haven't seen these, Matt and the team wanted to do a theory figuring out which Disney movie was the deadliest, and it turned into a much bigger project than they were expecting, spanning over an hour of content across 3 videos. They really killed it in that series, pun intended, and believe me, I know for a fact that it was a lot of work. And their conclusion? Disney's Dinosaur took home the most kills, with at least 300,005 deaths, mostly because of the lemurs killed on Lemur Island when it went up in flames. Honestly, I always thought that that was hilarious, because this is likely the only award that Disney's Dinosaur is ever going to get. But also, it made me wonder, surely that can't be right? Surely something else could win.
Don't call me Shirley.
Especially as more movies have come out, so we've seen big films with big conflicts in them. We're talking Raya, Frozen 2, Strange World. Surely something can beat Dinosaur, and I want to see if that's the case. But, well, here's the thing. Let me just say that I thought that this was going to be a fun, quick, simple video. Well, let's just count up the deaths in the new movies and do a part 4 to see if Dinosaur can be driven to extinction. But, well, you know how sometimes you go back and rewatch stuff and notice something completely new and different? Well, when the team and I jumped back in to watch all of the Disney movies for our Disney Timeline Theory last year, go check that out, by the way, we noticed a lot of new stuff. Stuff that I know Matt didn't cover in the previous videos. So, yeah, a big portion of this video is going to be me pulling my best YouTube commenter impression, pushing up my glasses and saying, actually, just saying, if we're doing this, we're doing it right, we gotta be thorough. So, which Disney movie is actually the deadliest? Grab your popcorn and watch along, loyal theorists. This is gonna be a long one. So in case you don't remember, and I mean fair, it's been like 6 years since we did those old videos, here are the rules we laid out for this challenge. Rule number 1, we're only counting deaths of sentient beings, because things get weird otherwise. Like, there are plenty of animals in the Disney canon, and they are not all created equally. Some rabbits are just rabbits. Some dogs are just dogs.
Yeah, baby. You want to get up in your chair?
Thinking, feeling beings who can communicate those thoughts and feelings. So, for our purposes today, we're drawing the line here. If an animal can speak, or if they act as intentionally driven characters, they count for this theory. If they don't, they don't. Oh, and just real quick, but for my science nerds out there, sentient might be the wrong word here. Sentient applies to the ability to experience feelings and sensations, while sapient refers to the ability to be conscious and self-aware, forming thoughts and communicating feelings. But that's word nerd stuff, so we're just gonna move on. Rule number 2, we will only count deaths that actually happened during the time frame of the movie. Nothing that happens before or after the runtime will count.
Hello.
Rule 3, we will
Oh,
only
thank you,
count
Nightmare.
kills caused by the characters
Sorry, I'm a little bit
and events.
boring to watch,
This
but
is
you're welcome to
really
hang around or
important.
check in every once in a while to see how things are going.
During the runtime of the movie,
Hang on, I
outside
have
of
to
movements
cuddle my
from,
cat.
like, you know, just like regular people on the other side of the world dying from like old age or whatever. This also means that we have to
Hey.
stuff like all of the people
Here's
who
Ghetto.
died from the Noah's Ark sequence from Fantasia 2000, since the
He's
short
my
only
old
followed
boy.
the living things that get on that boat.
He's
So
probably not
basically,
going to make
dragon
the
we
winter
were
or the rest of the summer, but we love him.
definitely didn't
And he's going to get all the treats and the loving we can give him.
Also, a small
And
but important one
we're
here,
gonna do everything we can to make him
we won't be
comfy.
counting any deaths that are undone. So if
Let's
a
go
character
to your
does die,
chair.
but somehow
Right here.
revived by Disney magic, they're off the table. All that being said, we do need to
Isn't
change
that
one of
nice?
the old rules slightly.
I got it
See,
just
back
for you,
during
my
that
finest
original
fluff.
trilogy of theories, we didn't count the sequels or spin-offs. This was mostly so we wouldn't need to count or watch most of the old straight-to-DVD sequels like Cinderella 2 or The Lion King 1.5, or TV spin-offs like Aladdin, Entangled, and the like. Basically, we wanted to avoid something really disappointing like
Oh, you swatted at me.
because of something stupid that happened.
I stopped patting and that was a no-no.
Disney films out of contention. The Rescuers Down Under and Ralph Breaks the Internet. For the most part, this didn't really impact much of anything because there weren't a ton of these sequels from Disney's main studio. But from 2018 to 2027, half of the Disney film lineup is sequels. We're talking Frozen 2, Moana 2, Frozen 3, and with original movies like Raya and the Last Dragon, Strange World, and
Okay, now,
we might just
you're near me, you're comfy, go back to sleep.
a big part of Disney's
I'll get you some more treats in
so,
a
as a
minute.
compromise here, we're only going to be counting films made by Walt Disney Animation Studios. That's Disney's main animation company and covers what is known as the Disney canon. This will let us count all of Disney's main movies while ignoring all of those sequels and spin-offs that are of a much lower quality, thank God. So, with all of that said, first things first, we double check all of the previous work because there are some corrections we have to make. We previously calculated that there were a total of 344,031 deaths throughout all of Disney's canon, but there are a few issues with that number. Mainly that the numbers that we add up don't actually add up to that number. Hey man, math's hard and we've all made typos. It happens. For example, at one point we mentioned that there were 41 deaths across all of the films we talked about in part 1, despite listing 54 specific deaths at that point. It's a small error, it happens, but I want to make sure that we get you the most accurate number possible here. So to make sure of that, we did what any good theorist would. We made a spreadsheet.
Spreadsheets.
What exactly do we need to clarify here? Well, first up, we mistakenly counted Marshmallow's death in Frozen, but totally overlooked the after-credits scene where Marshmallow is shown alive and well. He also shows up in Frozen 2 just to further bring that point home. So we're gonna have to subtract one death from that previous total, going from 33 to 32. We're also going to throw in those 3 laughing mythological creatures from Fantasia 2000 that I mentioned earlier, since they did not have the last laugh when the flood came. Last year's Moana 2 also showed that the Kakamora survived their skirmish with Moana and Maui, and we know that these are the same Kakamora because they have the same leader. So we'll need to subtract 260 deaths there too. In Treasure Planet, we thought that all of the patrons in the destroyed inn from the beginning were also part of the body count, but most of them then showed up again in the last few minutes of the movie, so we're gonna assume that all of them survived, bringing that total to just 1,008. And in Brother Bear, we had no issue counting up the amount of fish eaten, but somehow forgot to count the main character's brother and Coda's mama bear. Oops. And just to show that we really dotted our I's and crossed all of our T's here, I want to mention all of the big movies that we didn't call out last time. First up, the Aristocats, Bolt, Lilo and Stitch, the original Fantasia, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and Meet the Robinsons all have 0 deaths in them. And just to nip this in the bud, Ichabod's fate is a bit ambiguous, but we don't see a body, so we're not going to count that one there. As for low death movies, well, there's Beauty and the Beast, which sees Gaston fall to his death. The thief Jafar sends into the Cave of Wonders, and Aladdin also bites it, or I guess it's bitten. Cocoon gets shot in in Pocahontas, Tadashi gets blown up in Big Hero 6, and Cinderella's father passes away at the very start of that film. Todd's mother from The Fox and the Hound gets shot off screen Bambi's mother style, while the bear takes a nasty tumble that likely kills him. Woodland animals are sapient in this movie, so both of those count. This movie also gets the award for the saddest letting a pet go for its own good scene in literally any movie I've ever seen. Cry every time. Though we briefly mentioned Melody Time in our very first video, and how Little Toots caused a pretty nasty accident when he crashed the ship into New York City, that actually didn't cause any deaths. If it had, the flags we see later in the movie would have been at half-mast to mourn the loss of life. But there were other deaths that we didn't count, including Johnny Appleseed, who passes away from old age, and Pecos Bill's girlfriend, who gets blasted to the moon. So that's two right there. I was also a bit surprised that we glossed over the Black Cauldron in our previous videos, because it's widely seen as Disney's darkest movie. Surely it has a ton of kills, right? Well, not so. Yeah, it has a lot of dead things, but not a whole lot actually dies during the runtime of the movie. The Army of the Dead do take out two randos, and the Horned King falls victim to the Cauldron's power, but that's about it. Stalin ripoff Gurgi does die in the Cauldron too, but comes back to life at the very end of the movie. So the Black Cauldron only adds 3 to the total tally. Now here's where I think the death count is really gonna surprise you. The Princess and the Frog. Yeah, what might seem like a pretty lighthearted princess fare on the outside is actually a pretty dark story when you really break it.
Are you full stack marketers spending all day switching between platforms? Now with Semrush Toolkits, no more running from one app to the next. You pick and pay for exactly what you need, all in one place.
Oh my god, he's comfy. Well, he's tolerating this existence anyway.
Farmer Terry is in dire need of your help. You need to restore the farm to its former glory. It's important. All life on the farm is protected. From animals to plants to the children you visit. We care.
Breaks down, like Raid, the lovable firefly gets crushed by Dr. Facilier. That crunching sound is just so nasty. Hey man, at least Ray gets turned into a star in the afterlife. Dr. Facilier also meets his own terrible fate when the voodoo forces come to collect what they're owed. And we're gonna count his death as 2 deaths though, because his shadow appears to be an independent sapient being that shares the villain's fate. And since we're counting living shadows, we gotta add the 4 shadow creatures that Mama Odie vanquishes, and then the 4 that Ray takes out, bringing this film's total to 11.
The numbers all go to 11.
The Emperor's New Groove is also surprisingly deadly when you sit and think about it. How so? Well, first off, there are 6 guards that get turned into animals by Yzma's potions, 5 of which met their untimely end when they jumped down a drain in pursuit of Cusco and Pacha.
Come on, man. Nobody lives forever.
I think the one guard that asked to go home made the right choice here. As for the 6th death, well, there's a bug that gets eaten by a spider earlier in the movie. Now you might be thinking, hold up, that's just a bug, but remember our rules here. We're counting sentient beings who can feel and communicate. And listen to this, the bug calls out for help. Also, side note really quick, but the only animals we see speak in this movie have been transformed by Yzma's potions, so I think that this poor insect might be one of Yzma's victims. And then there's Tarzan, who starts stacking these bodies early on in the runtime.
Percy Yellow.
The first scene shows a ship burning and sinking at the same time. For a ship of this type, the crew probably would have been about 30 people, which is an interesting
Where's the yellow?
It's also the same number that was on the ship carrying the frozen parents.
Where is the
but we can't count
yellow?
these based on our rules.
Found it.
By the time the movie actually starts, everyone else on board appears to already be dead, since Tarzan and his family are escaping alone and not trying to help anyone else at all. So yeah, if Tarzan had started just 20 minutes earlier, we'd have a lot more deaths to log, but these casualties aren't technically in the runtime, so we can't. But cheer up, because there are still more to cover. The leopard Sabor kills Kerchak and Kala's baby gorilla and Tarzan's parents. Tarzan kills Sabor, Clayton kills Kerchak, and then hangs himself in what might be one of the most brutal Disney deaths ever. And this movie was not.
I had to point that out to my friend when we watched it, because I saw it and she didn't.
The accurate death count from the prior 3 episodes of the series to 345,115, just based on all the films we assigned concrete numbers to. And just let me say that.
All right, which other? You've got yellow?
This series of episodes was so complicated to research, but I still think that we can find something that will beat Dinosaur. So let's hop into the new movies and see what we got. First up, Wish, which had 0 kills, except for the movie's chances at the box office. Oh, and since we're now counting sequels, let's also get this one out of the way really quick. We see 1 death with the poacher that gets poached in The Rescuers Down Under. We also see the pilot in Strange World get killed, but he's the only one in that movie. And in Kanto, there's a flashback of Mirabel's grandfather getting killed. This movie also has Casa Madrigal getting destroyed, which is indeed a sentient being and part of the Madrigal family. But the town then put it back together in the final sequence, bringing the house back to life. So only one death there too. Next up, and the most recent movie so far, Moana 2. Yeah, this movie caused us to go back and change all of the Kakamora deaths from the first movie, significantly reducing the number of kills in that film. But what about the new deaths in this movie? Well, we see the deaths of Moana's ancestor and his crew in a flashback, and Moana herself also dies, but then comes back as a demigod, so that doesn't count. All in all, that just adds another 3 deaths here. Oh, okay. So what about Raya and the Last Dragon? I actually have a lot of hope for this one to have a huge death count, which is an incredibly weird thing to say out loud, but regardless, think about it. If you didn't end up seeing this one, and you probably didn't, considering the box office on this one, man, COVID was brutal. The conflict in Raya centered around an evil force known as the Droon terrorizing the land of Kumundra. They petrified every living creature they touch, human, dragon, or otherwise, into stone. And we see a ton of people get stonified here, while there's a bunch of fighting in between. Surely there's a ton of death and destruction here, right? Well, not so. See, at the end of the movie, all of the stone transformations are reversed, basically unkilling everybody that the Droon killed. Even all of the dragons that have been stoned for centuries are released, so despite all of its violent battles, this dragon movie turned out to be quite toothless, with 0 deaths. Okay, I'm getting a little nervous that nothing's gonna rival Dinosaur here. Maybe we can find some hope in Frozen 2? I mean, a violent battle broke out between Arendelle and Northuldra, right? Well, sure, but the forces of nature intervened right away to shut that fighting down, but not before these 2 guys take a tumble off the side of a cliff. I'm also gonna say that the right-hand man of Elsa and Anna's grandfather also died in this battle, because if he'd survived, he could have told someone about the grandfather's evil scheme, and that the dam he built was the reason that nature sealed off the forest. Elsa also briefly dies, taking Olaf, Marshmallow, and all of her other creations with her, but this is temporary, and they're all brought back by the post-credits scene, which we did watch this time. So, that's just 3 total for Frozen 2. Man, so far, most of these films had a smaller death count than I was expecting, like, especially with Raya. I thought for sure we'd have something to rival Dinosaur, and, well, there is one movie that does rival it. It actually completely overshadows it, believe it or not. Yeah, the deadliest movie Disney's ever released. Drum roll, please! Ralph Breaks the Internet. Wait, really? Yeah, I know. I was surprised too, but this is legit. So, how does this one possibly rack up so many deaths? Well, it's all thanks to this right here. Yeah, during the course of this movie, Ralph is cloned several times. The group becoming a literal embodiment of Ralph's insecurities that rampages through the web. But wait, are we really going to be counting clones for this here? For real? And yeah, I know that might be controversial, but the answer is yes. When you really look at it, they fulfill all of the criteria we laid out for them to be sentient or sapient. They have thoughts and feelings. They can communicate and understand things. And, in fact, when the Ralphs combine into their giant Ralphzilla form, the protagonists are only able to stop it by talking things out, appealing to their humanity, their sentience. They check all of the boxes to count, so if you have a problem with this, don't take it up with me. I didn't make the rules. Anyway, Ralph is
That's all the
ultimately
yellows?
able to calm his planets down, telling them
Yeah,
that
all the
everything will be
yellows.
okay, and convincing them to let go
Hi,
of their
guys.
insecurities.
Really gonna know.
However, because each of these clones are made up entirely of Ralph's insecurities, by letting them go, they fade away. In the movie itself, this represents Ralph's emotional issues being resolved. But for our purposes today, oh my god, they're all dead! They literally disappear out of existence because they let go of the only thing keeping them together, and that's surprisingly dark when you really sit down and think about it. But okay, down to brass tacks. The real question here is
Brass
exactly how many
tacks.
Ralph clones make up Ralphzilla here? Well, at first I hoped that we might be able to do some math to figure it out. After all, Ralph's canon height is 9 feet tall, so we could theoretically do some pixel measurements here to get a rough estimate. But fortunately for us, we don't have to. In fact, we have an official number. In an interview, the film's effects lead explained just how many Ralphs they needed to make up Ralphzilla, and said that it took 550,000 Ralphs. Yeah, 550,000 500,000! That means that when they all faded away, we have to add another 550,000 deaths to our total tally. And believe it or not, that single-handedly makes Ralph Breaks the Internet the deadliest Disney film, knocking Dinosaur off the only pedestal it's ever been put on. So with all of that in mind, tallying all of these deaths together, Disney's total death count now sits at, another drumroll please,
I thought Dinosaur was in the millions.
895,123. Almost 900,000 souls lost for our entertainment at the happiest place on earth. And I gotta say, something that really stuck out to me while rewatching all of these movies, despite Disney cranking out movies for nearly 90 years, it seems like 99% of the deaths all came from movies that came out in the last 30 years or so. Why? Well, the scope of Disney's films just continued to grow and grow. Gone are the days where a simple fairy tale would suffice. A princess in the woods hanging out with talking animals and tricking evil witches and all of that stuff.
That's not the
Now
right
we're
one.
seeing gods fight titans.
Nope, that's the right one
Civilization
there.
is sink, the entire internet being put at risk. And things are only going to be getting bigger and bigger. Honestly, it's a question of when, not if, Disney's death count is going to top 1 million, and you best believe that we'll be here to count it when it does. But until then, remember that it's all
Best we're going for red.
a film theory. And cut.
Oh, hello.
Next on Film Theory.
Oh, so you thought putting 27 movies
Sorry,
in the timeline
I don't
was
really
hard
look
to
at the
do?
chat too much when I'm
Today we're putting
arting.
60 films into one
I don't do
cohesive
claps,
timeline.
but thank you for the offer.
Disney theory to end them all.
Where are you from? Ah. Is it warm down there? It's starting to get better weather up here now, so my garden's starting to look like a garden now.
Today we end the torment. 19 books,
That's
11
good.
games, 8 whole years, all leading to this moment.
Do you make any
The
crafts or
ultimate
anything?
Timeline is finally complete.
Any
The
artwork?
pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss back together. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory.
Bye.
So it feels
Thanks for
like
stopping
he's
by.
reviewing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past decade of my life. This one is big, my friends, and I gotta admit, kinda nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018. Back in the days when Mike was the crying child, Afton coming back was actually a surprise, and Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I'd ever thought I'd have to utter. But since the last time I did something like this, we've had 3 more massive games, a death and revival of the FNAF movie, and more robot kids that you can shake a staff bot at. It is exhausting trying to keep track of this whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today. The lore at this
It's a little
point
plain,
is
but we'll dress it up
complicated.
somehow.
It is full of speculation and theories, so to hopefully make it a little easier for everyone and to give us all a baseline to talk about this franchise moving forward into the future, it's time to reveal my current working FNAF timeline. But just before I do, I just want to explain a couple of things. First, this timeline is massive.
Can't help it. I still like Matt's voice the best.
Over any video project we have ever done on the channel.
You can tell he had acting lessons compared to the other ones.
FNAF really boils down to the story of one man, William Afton. His successes, his failures, his rise to becoming co-owner of one of the most successful restaurant franchises in the world, and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped to create, only to then be reborn in a new digital form.
Reborn.
So sit back, grab some popcorn or your pitchforks if you're the type to get upset when I say something controversial, and make sure that you subscribe, since this
I left
is
the
gonna be a
pitchfork
video that you're gonna
outside.
come back to a few times in order to fully
I do have to go
dissect.
move some hay tomorrow,
I
so
present to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness, and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life. Our story begins not in the 1980s, or even in the 1970s, but all the way back in the 1930s. It was the throes of the Great Depression. People were in desperate need of cheap entertainment, especially in Utah, one of the states hit hardest, 4th highest unemployment in the nation and full of transients. People looking for work in Salt Lake, finding none, and ultimately moving on to find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits. A simple roadside attraction called Fredbear's Seed Show. Ads were plastered all over town. featuring an animated bear drawn in the popular pie-eyed cartoon style for characters at the time. He resembled cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop. It immediately said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life dancing bear perform on stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey, where the tickets would go for about $1. That's $1 without food. But this was a smaller show. The type from the Von Brothers or the Robbins Brothers, where tickets would sell for just a mere 50 cents. Watching that bear do tricks on stage brought a glimmer of joy at a time when so much was wrong with the world. The simple show would go on for years, bringing happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had. One little boy named Billy. That was his nickname at least, but his parents liked to call him William Afton. The bear could dance, it could sing. For decades, William dreamed of recreating that moment of bringing a musical bear to life, but how? William was smart, without a doubt. He had a keen mind for business, but he wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using a rudimentary costume. We know, based on the retro poster that was hidden in Security Breach, that at least at one point, Fredbear was an actual bear. Dancing bear shows were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that, timing-wise, none of our main characters would be the people in charge of that business in the 30s and a series of pizza restaurants in the 80s without them just being extremely old. Best case scenario, if Afton's running the singing show when he's 18, that still puts him at nearly 70 when the first pizzeria opens and his murder spree begins. It just doesn't make a lot of logical sense because he doesn't become immortal until his first death in Springtrap. That's why I suspect that Fredbear's singing show was either a family business that Afton then carried on to a new generation or something that he saw as a kid and just wanted to recreate when he grew up. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his theme park. The big innovation? Suits with 5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests, as opposed to the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fredbear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons, he changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish yellow bear with a purple hat and bow tie. But feeling like one character wasn't enough, he added another friend, a yellow rabbit with a purple vest and matching tie named Bonnie the Bunny. While Fredbear was certainly his first love, Bonnie was extra special because that was his. It was an original character that he had created from scratch. And I do mean scratch. William's hand-sewn costumes were rough, with seams and stitches visibly showing. It's a handcrafted suit. You can see the seams and everything. It even has 5 fingers for the performer's hands. It is very much not a Springtrap suit. This is something much more rudimentary. It came at a time before animatronics were a part of the story. That's why I suspect that it was actually the first, predating literally everything. It's also a suit that is very personal to Afton. He put his digital consciousness in that form. It's his personal avatar. It's the way that he sees himself. There's also a whole separate discussion to be had here about the habits and rituals of serial killers. So the fact that he's choosing to lure kids and kill them in this particular suit actually says a lot about his emotional attachment to it. So while Fredbear seems to have started as someone else's creation, Golden Bonnie was uniquely Williams, giving him a personal connection. And that's not all. In this whole franchise, only one set of characters have themselves 5 fingers, the Nightmares. Even Golden Freddy, Fredbear was a 5-fingered wearable suit at one point in the story, as we see in this shot from the graphic novel, before he, like everyone else, was turned into an animatronic. This seems to imply that all of the main characters had similar wearable mascot outfits at least at one point in time, and that whoever is having the FNAF 4 nightmares, if they even
Like
are,
cover you up and tuck you in, but you hate having a blanket on top of you.
Bonnie and Fredbear would perform on stage to small but enthusiastic crowds. Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted and inspired so many years ago. Afton, despite eventually falling to become the heartless serial killer and mad scientist that we know him as, began as someone with good intentions and
They
a
all
love of
begin.
entertaining kids.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
A theme that recurs a lot for him throughout the rest of the franchise. And things could have ended there. That
As they
could have been
say.
the end to his story. It could have been perfect had it not been for one thing. Other people saw the success of his idea, and they wanted in. Enter Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animal characters. His idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first, but obviously he wasn't the best. It hurt the prideful William Afton to admit it, but this restaurant was able to do the thing that he always wanted to do. Make the animals actually come to life. All of the performers in this restaurant were robots, simple metal skeletons that were powered by battery packs, but all of them able to freely turn and talk and dance on their own, no human required. It was like magic that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry Emily. This Henry, in some small way, had been able to harness the power of life itself. Afton admired him. He was jealous, to be sure, but he also looked upon this man with awe. Off to one side of Chica's party world was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, the hippo known to ramble on and on. That one was more of a joke for the parents, but it was the main stage that was for the kids. A rocking band of characters featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica, backed by a band of other country-themed characters, including a pig with a banjo, an upbeat frog from the local swimming hole, and a brown bear with a heavy southern accent. Wait, a bear? But bears were his animals. Why not a cow or a horse? Something to fit the country theme a bit better. Why did it have to be a bear? And adding insult to injury,
Okay,
they had
there, all the red is done.
call this thing Ned Bear, a direct copy of his own Fred Bear.
Alright, what color is next? Probably this one. So we got one heart with this color, because it's shit.
Especially Ned Bear, which is just so suspiciously close to Fred Bear. And yet, there are two key details that we're going to have to justify with any mediocre melodies mentioned. One, they're very rudimentary with external battery packs, implying that they come very early in the timeline. And two, we know that at minimum, Mr. Hippo does eventually become an official member of the extended Freddyverse. But if these things are supposed to be cheap, generic rip-offs, why would you be trying to rip off yourself? You wouldn't. You would be stealing someone else's ideas. So if Afton created Fredbear, there would have to be some rival franchise. The only other person who would likely be ripping him off? Henry. We've talked extensively about how the mediocre melodies are clearly Henry's design aesthetic. So it just has to be him. I don't think Henry's doing this maliciously. He doesn't strike me as the type. He was likely building the robots at the orders of someone else that was running a rival restaurant franchise. But that's enough motivation to start Afton down a path of jealous rivalry, but also begrudging admiration. As the Freddy Files Ultimate Edition says, it's important to revisit the beginning of Henry and William's relationship, so here you go. I think this is where it begins. Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation. I've had this timeline written for about a month now, but I've also been holding off a bit to see what wrenches this character encyclopedia might throw into it. And on this particular point, I gotta say, it seems like we might actually have
If you're
nailed
cold,
it.
go
They
upstairs.
actually call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear crew. Quote from one of the pages. Ned Bear looks like an imitation, altered just enough to avoid copyright issues. I don't know about you, but that seems to imply that we were right on the money. Knowing all of this, at one point the franchises had
Needle over there.
That's really the only way
This
to
I got from the oven.
rival franchises
Well, I got from the lamp.
This also means
Ow.
a lot of what happened in the real-life history of Chuck E. Cheese, with two rival restaurants, each with their own casts of characters, merging to become one unified brand. Again, we've gone into that in detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here. But why would I call out the rival restaurant as being named Chica's Party World? A few things, actually. First, we know for a fact that a location named Chica's Party World exists.
There we go.
It is mentioned in the source code teasing sister location, so it is out there somewhere and doesn't fit cleanly anywhere. Second, in the story The Puppet Carver, Chica is very explicitly looped in with the book versions of Pig Patch and Ned Bear, implying that she started as a mediocre melody. Thirdly, her design just fits better with the theme of down-home country animals with southern accents playing the banjo and eating with bibs. And with her being the headliner of the show with her name on the restaurant, it would make sense then that when the restaurants merged, she was the one that was added to the main cast of characters while all the other mediocres faded away. It's also why when Freddy's closes after William's killing spree, she's the one to branch back off into her old franchise and is therefore missing in sister location. A detail that's bothered me for years at this point. It might also explain why William decided to stuff his first dead kid into Chica. That one was Henry's creation, not his. Afton's jealous admiration turned to hardened bitterness. A bitterness that would only grow over the next couple of years as families continued to choose Chica's Party World over Fredbear's. William just couldn't compete with the appeal of the robots. Eventually, his restaurant would go bankrupt, only to get bailed out by, of course, Henry Emily. Another insult, another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget. 1979. Despite being bitter, Afton couldn't deny that what came next was a period of massive success and expansion. With the two franchises now merged into one, it was the best of both worlds. Afton's ideas with Henry's robotic expertise. The two men decided to launch under a new name, Fredbear's Family Diner, a pizza chain that would eventually come to feature a mix of humans in performing suits as well as on-stage animatronics. animatronics. They decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering the yellow bear was easily identifiable as a brand because he was the original performing animal mascot. Afton appreciated that. This new restaurant would also see a mix of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one big Fredbear family, they even got themselves official merch that were released, ranging from masks to magnets.
Crappy Mr. Hippo fridge magnet?
That said, not all the characters were winners. The reception to some characters was just mediocre, so they faded away into the dumpster, storage units, and retro budget tech stores of lost nostalgia, waiting for their chance to step back into the limelight.
I don't really like this one.
Went out of commission. Others, though, would fare
It's
much
the shapes I
better
don't
than
like.
Pirate Fox, as
I
well
think
as
the
blue guitar
color-
playing variant of the yellow Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately, the franchise would get so big it would spawn its own cartoon show, Fredbear and Friends. Business was booming. In the end, Fredbear and Bonnie's popularity would be so strong that they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to their friends. In 1983, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all this new supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course the headliner, a brown Freddy Fazbear. Business was good, and Afton was happy, mostly. It did bother him that the one original character that he created, the one that he himself played, Golden Bonnie, got passed over for inclusion in that cartoon show. The only character in the roster of regulars to get ignored for the show, but other than that, things were going smoothly. He had himself a wife, 2 sons, a daughter, he had a thriving business, and best of all, he was able to learn the craft of robotics from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they were constantly pushing the limits of what these characters could do. Because it was quick and easy, new characters introduced into the roster would be given a simple hand-sewn suit with 5 fingers that any performer could wear. Eventually,
baby.
Henry would design
Go
his
upstairs
signature
if you can't
animatronics
breathe.
for that character, utilizing a divided mouth with either a hinged or sliding jaw design. This was the first generation
You
of
want me to
animatronics.
get you steam?
Why stop there? Afton had big ideas. What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage, but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with the kids? What if his mascot suits could become animatronics? What if you could use more than just rigid
I'm right
metallic
here.
skeletons? Why not experiment with tubes and wires that
Oh
would
my
give the
goodness.
animatronics fluidity and flexibility while still providing structure? The possibilities for this technology were endless.
they even got you the
Afton
good
fell
fake
in
for
love
Leon.
with robotics. He had started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life, but with robots,
I've
he
lost
had
some
stumbled
weight.
across the tools that gave him the ability to control
Doesn't seem to be in
life
pain, just
itself.
discomfort
Thanks
when
to
his
Henry,
nose
he
is
was
stuffy.
practically speedrunning his way to an engineering degree. And while William wouldn't admit it
can't
out
see-
loud,
oh, we
one
can't
of the
even
things
see
that
him.
kept pushing him forward was the desire to beat his former rival, to prove himself smarter and more capable, to surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary
Lay down.
genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy was about to
There you go.
strike.
Yeah.
1983, business was booming with 2 whole restaurant franchises running, Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Together, William and Henry had been
There
able
we
to
go.
take the
See?
hybrid
Just
food
like that.
idea and make it into a reality.
I'm
They
not
called
gonna
their
keep
new
patting you. I
invention
have to get
the
to work. I need both of my hands for that.
Fittingly enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these 2 men. A human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot. But because it was still new tech with kinks to work out, the rollout was limited, restricted
He's a
only
good
to
boy.
the Fredbear's Family Diner location. All of this meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were hidden throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, plushy Fredbear. But since cameras just weren't enough to raise a kid, he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael. There was just one problem with that. Michael was far from the best babysitter. He tormented his younger brother by jump-scaring him with a boxing mask and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day, after all. Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining crybaby all the time? It just wasn't fair. It was time that he got even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday. He and his friends would take his scared little brother and make him do the one thing that he was terrified of doing, getting close to the animatronics. That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment to him. His brother squirmed, screamed, kicked, and fought, but just as they were putting that small, squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped shut. The sensitive spring locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements. They'd immediately clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy would limp. It was just a prank. It was meant to be funny. The boy was taken to the hospital and was immediately given an IV. Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next to his hospital bed, but the damage was too severe. He couldn't recover. As the younger brother's consciousness began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his father, William, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to his dying son. You're broken. I will put you back together. This would not be the end. No matter what, William's son would live again. It would just take time. Time that, right now, he just didn't have. His young son's heart flatlined as the boy faded into the inky unknown of the afterlife. In the aftermath of the tragedy, changes started happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting outside without parental permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was William's idea, inspired by Michael constantly leaving the restaurant without his brother. In the wake of Fredbear's spring lock failure, all the hybrid suits were getting retired, locked away Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to swallow after all the hard work that he and Henry
Okay,
had put
is there
into.
anything else I can... Oh yes, the paint before it dries completely.
Right alongside his bride,
Purple paint.
out of work every day. The death of this little boy. His wife, with grief, was so distraught that all she did was
it's
watch
shifted,
TV.
sorry.
His son Michael was far worse, complaining of seeing hallucinations of a golden bear standing outside his window. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother stuck inside the suit that took his life. The suit's three-toed feet digging into the wet earth. The words, "It's me," ringing through Michael's ears. Some nights, Michael would even go so far as to break out of his room to check the gravesite and ensure that his brother was still there. As for William himself, he disappeared into his work and his drinks. Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's gravesite. He found himself going there more and more frequently and spending longer and longer amounts of time there. The bar gave him a place to think, to remember, to reflect and stew on how Henry had stolen his idea for an animal-themed restaurant. How they cut his character out of the cartoon when everyone else was there. How Henry had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy. And now there was his son. Henry had taken his son from him. The robotic part was the part that failed after all. William ordered one more drink, but it was one too many. The bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't go home. Drunk and angry, William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind, only to find someone else waiting. Henry's daughter, Charlie, locked outside of the building, bullies laughing at her through the window. Fine, some other problem to fix. But then Afton got an idea. Beautifully awful idea. This was his chance to get back at the man that had humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own. Let Henry feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley, and it felt good. He felt free. Years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart.
Oh, you're
finally
getting
released in
steamed
a
tonight,
moment of
Cat.
Pure unapologetic evil. He would make Henry hurt like he hurts.
I would like to do the edges in black. I just don't have the ability.
But even softer. New Scotty's Ultra Soft.
The cheese made with 100% Canadian dairy looks like the Blue Cow logo on Black Diamond, Cracker Barrel, and cheese strings.
What if we could create a nice world where customer experiences are a nice part of your day? Easy, quick, from anywhere. We're all about the customer, always. That's nice.
There we go.
There's no limitation.
Alright.
We won't challenge.
Might need it again for a couple more touch-ups before the end, so back to go. Alright. What's happening now? That's crooked as fuck. And I can't change it.
Became a killer, dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove home, forced to confront his family problems later that night. Appalled, but also excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death would remain on the books as a random act of violence. Though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence, nothing that could link him back to the crime. In the weeks that followed, Fredbear's Family Diner would close for good. 2 high-profile deaths around the restaurant with 2 grieving owners in such a short period of time, just too much bad press to handle. Besides, Freddy Fazbear's was still open, and it was the newer restaurant anyway. All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location.
And there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the new cast of characters were a hit. Tragic memories of their yellow predecessors quickly faded. Afton kept a low profile and buried himself in work and research, quickly reaching Henry's level of engineering, even surpassing him. And while Henry slowed down to grieve, Afton kept going, even starting his own company, Afton Robotics, for all those pet projects that were a little bit too experimental for the regular operations of the pizzeria. The first of these experimental projects was a secret workshop under his house, a veritable bunker, which allowed him to work while still monitoring his kids via hidden security cameras. 1983. A passcode that served as a constant reminder of why the cameras were so important, why he was down there in the first place. This was all to fulfill the promise that he had made to his son, right? I will put you back together. This was for him. All for him, right? But cameras weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem. He had to keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of his kids wind up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see, all this work with Henry had gotten Afton to start learning more about life, robots, the human mind, and what a fallible machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions. Deceptions like sound. With just a few sounds, he had discovered that he could alter a person's vision. He could transform blank, smooth plastic robots into lumbering, twisted nightmares. Nightmares far scarier than he could create with actual materials. They would appear organic, rotting, putrid, terrible. These would be his means of keeping his son Michael in the house where he belonged. Was it extreme? Maybe. But then again, this was the boy who had killed his son. He would make him sorry. So Michael would grow up not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital room, the pills, the flowers, the death of his brother, but also facing literal nightmares, illusions created by sound. Michael would never forget these either. Years later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook. But all of these extra projects meant that his home life suffered even more. He was an absent father and a non-existent husband, leaving his wife cold and alone.
Why do you hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls? All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb.
And despite her repeated demands that he leave his office and engage with the family, he refused time and time again, leaving her no choice but to leave.
You burned down my house.
You call that a house? It was like a morgue in there. You need to see your son.
The baby isn't mine.
Well, how's this? I'm keeping the diamond ring.
And through it all, there was one lingering feeling. William wasn't done. He had gotten a taste of what it felt like to be unleashed, what it felt like to be free. Charlie's murder had unlocked something in him, and he wanted more. On June 26, 1985, putting on the golden bodysuit, he lured the children one by one to the back room of the pizzeria where no one was looking. At first, he was cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog had died. He would ask for help with homework. Susie was the first. Never truly forget your first. But where to hide the bodies? He couldn't sneak out. Someone would see him. He had to hide them in a place where they'd never be found, and where they'd never leave the building. They had to be stuffed inside the suits. No one maintained those things anyway, except for him. And so Susie would go into Chica. Fritz, Jeremy, and Gabriel would come next. It was easy. It was too easy. And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They're just being kidnapped. Until the last one where all pretense was off. He let himself get violent. Too violent.
I'll just wait for him after school, throw a bag over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him into the back of my car.
The body of Cassidy was far more bloody and broken than any of the others. He'd let himself go too far. That one he should have killed. With no more active animatronics left, he shoved the body into the one suit that remained backstage. The long-forgotten yellow Fredbear, now broken and discolored with age. Broken, like Cassidy was broken, like his son was broken. Newspapers reported on this disappearance, naming the whole thing the missing children's incident. Police would even charge William with the crimes after finding security footage of the golden mascot suit luring kids to the back, but they couldn't convict him. They had no bodies, and his face had been hidden behind the mascot suit the entire time. What they had was circumstantial at best, so he walked away a free man. But Henry knew the truth. In these murders, he saw his daughter Charlie all over again. So he threw Afton out of the company and shuttered the doors to the old pizzeria. Henry would keep the franchise quiet for 2 years. This would not happen again. This could not happen again. How could he protect the kids? Finally, he developed a solution. solution. He would implement an even more extreme security system in the form of new animatronics, toy animatronics, inspired by the toys that they had been selling years ago. But these guys,
My
these were
goodness,
special. They were a new
handsome.
breed of robot with facial recognition abilities.
But most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database so they can detect a predator a mile away.
All the original animatronics, now withered with age, were moved to the new location. With a plan in place, it was time to try once more. The year was 1987,
Okay, gotta let
and
these
the new
dry
and improved
before-
Freddy
okay,
Fazbear's Pizza
okay.
was making headlines in
Hey,
local
baby.
newspapers.
Sit down,
Headlines
huh?
that just so happened to catch the attention of William Afton. Freddy's was back without him? That was his idea. His character. Henry was, yet again,
Here,
trying
lie
to
down.
put
We're
him
gonna go to
on
bed.
a picture. As
Oh,
long as
goodness.
these restaurants stayed open, William
What's
would
wrong
always
now?
come back. Then he noticed the phone number to apply at the bottom of the article. $100 a week to apply call. Afton would go back, not as an owner or co-founder. He would go back in the one place that they least suspect him, a lowly day shift security guard. There it was, buried in the back of parts and services mixed in with the old withered animatronics was the golden rabbit. With the yellow security badge still on his chest, he used his crank to pull open the spring box. It was time for Bonnie to give an encore performance.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right. From what I understand, the building's on lockdown. No one will allowed in the house, especially concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may lose you to the day shift. But this one just became available.
1987, 5 more kids. He didn't know what felt better, getting back into the suit after 2 long years of waiting, or knowing how devastating this would be to Henry the next morning. He didn't even try to hide his crime this time, just meant more blood on Henry's hands. He'd failed to protect the kids again. The restaurant had only been open for a few weeks, but William was sure that this would get it to close. Good, if he couldn't have Freddy's, no one would. Whenever a new pizzeria opened,
Go upstairs.
but as he sat in his bunker, something else started to linger in William's mind. He had seen something strange. The old withered animatronics, they had been wandering around the building, spurred on by the puppet. It was almost like those old robots were trying to save the kids. Save them? They couldn't, obviously, but still, how were they moving? It was almost like they had been given life somehow. Did he have something to do with that? The following
Oh my
day, police
goodness.
report a security guard getting
Go
bitten by
upstairs.
one of the
You can
animatronics
breathe
during the
better.
day shift. Was that bite meant for him? William's curiosity was stronger now than his bloodlust. He had to learn more, but how? There was no way he'd ever be able to get inside another Freddy's Pizzeria. Heck, there was practically no way a Freddy's would ever open again. He needed to create something new, something brand new. He needed to create his own pizzeria.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's
I know.
entertainment.
Circus Baby's Pizza World. This would be the place where he could continue his work. No longer just murdering, experimenting. He needed more kids, and he needed them alive. And knowing that he couldn't show his face on the restaurant floor, he needed a way of remotely capturing his victims and preserving them for his work. With that goal in mind, he designed a new breed of animatronic. Their endoskeletons fluid and flexible. He equipped them with sound lures that could mimic voices. They could isolate children. They could incapacitate and contain them with zero direct input from him. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. Far beyond the simple bars and wires of Henry's designs. And the characters he chose for this were uniquely his. His new roster wasn't going to be tainted by Henry's
Oh, there's an
disgusting
idea.
barnyard burn. Instead, it was back to his
Okay.
characters, his creations. Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, as well as 2 special ones. The first, Ballora, was an homage to the woman who left him. Now, she would never leave him again. The second, the titular baby, was designed with his baby in mind. Elizabeth, his youngest child. She would always be Daddy's little girl, the one that listened to him, the one that obeyed, until the day that she didn't.
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her? She's so pretty and shiny. Didn't you make her just for me?
The day before Circus Baby's Pizza World opened, she disobeyed. She didn't listen. Left alone with Baby, she got too close. The animatronic ripped in half and swallowed her whole. A scared and confused child fading into eternal darkness. By the time Afton found her, it was too late. She was gone. He immediately canceled the launch of Circus Babies under the guise of a gas leak. But wait, as he sat there at the foot of the stage, he noticed that something was different. The eye color of the robot had changed. Baby had been built with blue eyes, but now they were emerald green, the same color as Elizabeth's. Was she in there? Could this all be connected to the free-moving animatronics that he had seen at Freddy's? He had to know more. His mourning turned to excitement. He had to return to where it all started. 1993. Pathetic. This place was pathetic. Henry had clearly tried to reopen one final time with those old original animatronics from so long ago, but William's damage to the brand had been permanent. These things stank of death. They hadn't been washed in decades. But even if they had, nothing could wash away the stink of murder that haunted these halls. One night, then another, then another. William repeatedly snuck into the old, broken restaurant to lure the living animatronics to him, one by one dismantling them, robbing them of their endoskeletons. The metal had to be the secret. It had to contain the remnants of
1,
life
2, 3,
itself.
4. It doesn't matter. Just keep going.
Leaping out of a room that was invisible to the animatronics programming, he dragged the oversized robotic skeletons back to his underground workshop, back to where Circus Baby watched on with glowing, curious eyes. Eyes that somehow felt alive. Not knowing what else to do,
Let's see.
William melted the robotic
Ooh.
parts down. 5
No, it's not really designed for that. Oh, fuck it, why not?
Could he transfer this living metal to his own creations? He had to try.
Oh, no, I didn't click on that. I didn't click on that.
Metal and injected the goo into
God
finite
fucking damn it.
phrases, wiry endoskeleton. And suddenly the coils came to life, like snakes writhing in a pile. What had once been cold, lifeless metal moved and jolted on its own.
There's
He'd
another
done
one.
it. He had unlocked the secret to life itself. Except something was clearly wrong. The movements were erratic. They were violent, angry. Baby didn't act this way. She had been calm, collected. This was clearly something else, something mindless and frantic. Perhaps by mixing the souls and then portioning them out, he had created incomplete beasts. He would need to keep testing to truly understand it. He needed more of this remnant. As he searched the old pizzeria one more time for any remaining scraps of metal, the ghosts attacked. His past victims come to collect their due, all led by Cassidy. The 5 lined up and blocked the door. Afton's mind reeled. The scientific implications of this were incredible. Ghosts, real ghosts that he could see all standing against him. But what could they do? What couldn't they do? He panicked as Cassidy approached. How do you stop something that's already dead? Maybe with the thing that resulted in their death in the first place. He would get into a suit like old times. He would regain his power over them just like the day that they died. He was the genius. He was the one in the suit. He was the one in charge. The spring lock snapped into place. Maybe it was his frantic movements. Maybe it was the leaky abandoned restaurant. Maybe it was just fate coming to collect its due. He didn't know. The only thing he did know was that his brain was suddenly filled with searing white-hot pain as hundreds of metallic pins and gears stabbed into his body from all sides. All he could do was collapse, blood slowly oozing out of the suit and pooling out of the floor.
I hate it.
It couldn't end like this.
Oh, next.
At the Home Depot,
Ow.
we make the doing easy. So no matter what project,
I could do them all the same. I should do them all the same. I just can't do them all the same.
the Home Depot, how doers get more done.
I will go to 11.
This is Big Event is on now. Until June 11th, save up to 60% on a wide selection of styles, including great gift items just in time for Father's Day. This is Big Event on now at Marks and Marks.com.
We've been Mazda owners since 2011.
We have CX-90. That's the complete package. Driving dynamics, reliability.
Maybe there's something wrong with my car.
Find out why. Nothing moves like
Let's see. Them.
It wouldn't end like this. His work was unfinished. Unable to move, his only option was to survive, to live, to keep living. It took days lying in his own blood, but eventually someone found him. A security guard making a normal report. When he saw the animatronics torn apart in the middle of the party room floor, it caused him to file an immediate report of a break-in. An owner would have to come in and claim the damage. And who else would it be other than Henry? Hope jumped in Afton's heart. Henry would see him. They were partners, after all. He would be the one to help save him, to get him out of this suit, to relieve him from this tremendous pain. Henry entered the secret room. His eyes fell on Afton sitting there in the pool of red, and Henry, saying nothing, turned and walked away.
This is just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed in both locations, including this. Documents being taken out beforehand, so if you left anything inside, it's your own fault. Management also requests that this room not be mentioned to family, friends, or or insurance representative.
And so there Afton would sit, hanging on for 30 years, trapped behind the walls with an iron will, refused to die. Most of this is things that we already knew, stuff that's been established and re-established time and time again by the games. That said, there are two things that I absolutely have to address. The first and biggest is the placement of sister location, or more specifically,
No, you can't do that without the
to me, evidence in games
other
seems to
colors.
suggest it was meant to come before the crying child's death in 1983. The biggest clue to this is that the crying child saw something. Remember what you saw is the phrase that's repeated over and over again by psychic friend Fredbear, aka William Afton speaking through a walkie-talkie in the Fredbear plushie's stomach. But what did he see? Well, I think we can tell based on how the nightmare animatronics are visualized. They have mouths in their stomachs, just like Baby ripping in half at the waist to swallow a kid. There's also the empty girl's room, one presumably left behind by a dead sister. And lastly, it explains why he's scared, and more specifically, why Afton wants him scared. He needs his kids to stay away from the animatronics. He doesn't want them getting too close, because the last time one of his kids got too close to a robot, his daughter died. That's then why he sets up the nightmares, to scare both Mike and the crying child away from the animatronics from that point forward. That's why books like the Character Encyclopedia outright suggest that we play as the crying child in FNAF 4. That's why he has a nanny cam following the crying child everywhere, so he can keep tabs on his kids when they're out of his sight. He can't let
touch up the white
Elizabeth's
button.
situation happen.
I don't know, I feel like I should have some more on that one. It's not perfectly centered though.
He's a grieving
Oh,
father.
fuck it.
His daughter
Put something
was taken
anyway.
from him, so Charlie should die as well. He's lashing out at the world after losing his kids. And again, we know that at least one of his children had to have died prior to Charlie's death, based on the mound of dirt that we see in Midnight Motorist. It also allows Circus Babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy appearing as Mangle in the FNAF 2 location. Basically, Elizabeth dying first has everything it needs to fit, except for the most important thing, the murder weapon. Why would Afton be building an animatronic with a giant claw in its stomach so early in the timeline? At this point, he just has no motive. It just doesn't make sense prior to 1983. At this point in the story, he hasn't killed anyone, and we know for a fact that the missing children's incident is 1985. So Elizabeth's death coming before any of those events just doesn't work. Hence why I placed it where I did in the narrative timeline. Afton's death here is also a bit tricky. We know that he returned to the FNAF 1 location to break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We know that he melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy Cadet makes that very clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons from the various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria, Afton gets spring locked. So either the 5 becoming 1 starts in 1993, but then finishes 30 years later when he re-emerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile, or he's had himself some reason to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he can. It's not ideal, but it's the one angle that makes the most sense. William still wasn't back. Weird. Michael knew his father sometimes traveled for work, disappearing for days on end, but usually there was some sort of notice, a phone call, post-it, something. It's not like Michael and his father were close, far from it, but as a household of 2 suffering men coping with years of tragedy and loss, there's at least some element of communication between the two of them. They were united by a name and a shared pain. This time, though, things felt different. William had left nothing. His absence was longer. There were no check-ins, no updates, just silence. Something had happened. If there was one thing Michael knew about his father, it was that he had contingencies, safety checks, backup plans. His father was a careful and guarded man. He held his cards close to his chest, and as such, William had prepared him in the event that something like this ever happened. Normally, his father kept his home office locked, but in the event of an unexpected, prolonged absence, Michael had been instructed to enter his father's office and look behind an empty set of shelves mounted in the corner of the room. Rolling his eyes, Michael entered the office. Never fully understood how William was able to spend so many hours of his days locked up in here. There was just nothing to do. Most of this place was empty. He dragged himself over to the shelf in the corner, expecting to find an emergency contact list, a family safety deposit box. But what he actually found there was completely unexpected.
Okay.
It's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. Right where you said it would be.
The shelf swung open and revealed a giant industrial elevator, one that led straight down into an underground bunker. But that was impossible. Hidden inside his childhood home was a secret entrance to an enormous underground science lair? It didn't make any sense. Seriously, it didn't make any sense. And yet, here it was, mapped directly underneath the floor plan of the house that he'd grown up in, lost his brother in, being tortured in. Michael thought that he'd known his father, prideful, sad, angry man with petty everyday problems, but clearly he'd been living with his
Dinosaur?
strangers.
Ah, Good.
His father had seen
Alright,
Suddenly,
this
the
one,
days of
besides
being locked inside of his office made sense. He'd been here the entire time. Where
scraping
was
and,
Hero? Was this circus
nope,
baby
still got.
standing
God damn
The
it.
circus figure reference
Stop being a perfectionist and just let it fucking be.
failure was the cut unusually deep, especially after that first location had to be closed prematurely due to the gas leaks. After that day, Father really did seem to change, to lose himself even more in his work. Clearly, the entrance he had found was some sort of secret back way into the facility, one that required crawling through vents to navigate. His father had been working here, but in secret. Why? And that's when he found her. At the end of the facility, his father. Except something was different. She wasn't like the others.
All right.
She told the stories she told. This wasn't just a robot. She was alive somehow. And not
Alright,
only
this
was she
one
alive,
is done. Just need to finish the dries and.
Inside of me, I'm broken. I can't be fixed.
Sorry about that.
How? Why? What was this place? He dug around some old files
Alright,
and found
what's this one
blueprints
doing?
outlining the features of these animatronics, storage containers, voice mimicking, parental tracking. And is that child in Freddy's stomach? Was his father collecting and experimenting on kids? Were all the rumors that he'd heard throughout his past actually true? That the animatronics came to life at night? That there were murders done in all the pizzerias? That his father had somehow been the prime suspect in all of it? Suddenly, Michael's mind flashed back to his persistent
blush.
nightmares throughout his childhood. Had he been experimented on too? Tears stung in his eyes as anger, fear, and confusion filled his body. His father's secrets were pouring out. William wasn't just a lame, overworked father. He was a monster toying with life itself. Suddenly, everything clicked. He frantically looked around the room, blinking human heads on poles staring back at him. Green eyes, his sister. Blue eyes, his brother. Clay eyes, his mom. All just staring. Expectantly, these were meant to be human. William was working down here trying to make believable humans, literally rebuilding the family that they had both lost. The small little girl robots with their British accents roaming the hallways of this underground facility suddenly took on a whole new context. Were those meant to be his sister? A replacement for her? A clone? Was William
Still
building
needs
a
something in the
clone
muzzle.
of his sister? They seemed to know him, after all, to react to his presence.
Everything asked me at first, but then they thought I was you.
He always did have a bit of a resemblance to his father. Michael's mind reeled as the reality of his world.
I think that one's good.
No, he had to get them out of there. If this really was his sister, heck, if any of these things were human, souls, whatever remnant of the humans that they once were, they needed to be rescued.
They always put us back inside. There's nowhere for us to hide here.
Led by the voice of Circus Baby, he marched through the now empty halls of the Funtime Auditorium. He would lead them. He would protect them. And finally, he would be able to forgive himself for the killing of his brother so many years.
You are in the scooping room now. The scooper only hurts for a moment.
Scooper? That violent extraction arm? Michael had seen that one in the pile of blueprints. Something about heat rendering the magical silver metal inside useless. In reality, prior to getting himself spring-locked and put behind the wall, William's methods had become increasingly sophisticated, with a mechanized arm that could infuse new bodies with the soul. William could finally give and take away life. The only thing he needed were the bodies. But William wasn't the only one looking for bodies, as Michael was about to learn.
But if we looked like you, then we could hide. If we looked like you, then we would have somewhere to go.
Michael was going to be the hero to help these animatronics, all right. He was going to help the haunted tubes and wires of these animatronics escape, just not the way that he anticipated. His sister had lied to him, another game of pretend. The scooper plowed forward, digging its extraction arm into his body. As he heard his bones ripping through his flesh, Michael blacked out.
Something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not.
Oh, you stupid fucking secret.
For the next...
The deals are calling out Public Mobile, with savings on data that doesn't quit.
Did you know hair is 90% protein? But daily damage strips it away. New dog intensive repair with Liquid Bio Protein Care.
Okay.
Fills hair with amino acid molecule. For hair reborn 10 times stronger.
That one's done and that one's done.
The new Elastoplast Second Skin Protection. 100% waterproof.
Just needs more orange fixing. Needs more white fixing. The orange first. Oh, thank you for the love.
For the next several months, Michael's life was not his own. He was forced to comply with a tangle of wires and spirits that lived inside of him. His body felt like an overfilled balloon begging to burst as day by day, week by week, his flesh began to sag and discolor. He was a walking, talking, rotting corpse. Alive, but wishing he wasn't. He was a puppet, a walking shell. And while he did his best to conceal his fate, there was only so much a man filled with robot spaghetti could do. The entity
A
in his
man
ears
filled with
would eventually
robots.
leave, but by that point, the damage had been done. His decaying flesh stank, turning him into a literal purple guy. But still, even with no bones, even with rotting purple flesh and begging to die, Michael continued to live. That silvery metal remnant injected by the scooper meant that he couldn't die. His anger also refused to die. What he had seen down there in his sister's location had rocked him to his core. His father had killed and captured dozens. His experiments had killed his sister and then tortured him throughout all his childhood. He was actively trying to build human replicants. He didn't know where his father was, but Michael knew that he was out there somewhere.
I've been living in shadows. There's only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you.
Michael had to correct for the sins of his father. He had to make things right. Michael would burn Fazbear Entertainment to the ground. I mean, what else could you do when your skin was permanently purple? Michael's strategy was simple. He would apply for night security guard positions at the old defunct pizzeria locations. That way no one ever had to see him or smell him during his shift. And all these old shuttered locations did need guards. Teenage vandals and squatters were always looking to get inside these abandoned buildings, and yet no one ever really wanted to work an overnight graveyard shift unless they were practically out of options. Enter Mike. One by one, he would take on the job of security guard, changing his name each time to ensure that no one was able to follow his paper trail. Once inside, he could tamper with the animatronics and figure out how they worked, writing about his experiences in the security log.
Yeah.
While there, he would listen to the old tapes where upper management awkwardly welcomed the new recruits to their summer jobs, even though he was working there nowhere near the summer months. He heard the gory details of his father's franchise from the outsiders looking in, confused and afraid about what was happening in the walls around them. Sometimes he would see his brother in the form of the Golden Freddy suit. It's me appearing on the walls around him. Except now, there was something else there. He was no longer alone. Another angrier presence was also in the suit, as if two spirits were forced to share the same body. And Golden Freddy would attack it. It was aggressive. Its vengeance wanted to lash out at anyone with an Afton name, anyone who wore a security guard outfit. Over time, Mike worked his way through the old restaurants, the original pizzeria, the bigger, better Freddy Fazbear's. He spent weeks there looking for clues as to his father's whereabouts. And each time at the end of his week's shift, he would then set the location on fire. Remnant can't survive high temperatures after all. So burning away whatever spirit-laden animatronics...
Let's see if we can use something different this time. Oh, my bones!
Hallucinations that brought him back to his brother. The guilt around killing his brother.
Don't really fit, but maybe we can use some of these. Oh! That's what these.
Would all be worth in the end. The goal was to eventually stumble across the one location, the one job that would finally reunite him with his father. Little did Mike know that that day would come sooner than he expected. 2023, an advertisement came across Mike's TV. Fazbear Flights, new horror attraction inspired by the multiple crimes that occurred around Freddy Fazbear's Pizza so many years ago. It made Mike sick. People looking to make a quick buck off the tragedy of others, off his own family. This wasn't a joke or entertainment. Regardless, he had to be a part of it. If this team was combing through his family's history, they might stumble across something that could be useful. And if his father was truly still alive as he suspected, there would be no way
1,
that he
2,
would
3,
show up.
4.
Maybe
There's 5 of them.
finally, this could be the final chapter in his
I don't know if they
family's
stand out too much or
Looking
not.
forward to the job and was immediately handed the keys. Years of doing this had taught him that security guards rarely receive thorough security checks. I also liked how creepy Mike looked. They thought it was a costume on theme for the job. What little they knew.
These are little half crystals. I like those better than these, so I'm gonna go with those. But not right now.
This finally be him. Sure enough, there he was. William inside his iconic golden Bonnie Springlock suit. And now his clean beige. And there they were.
Oh shoot. Here.
It's been a long time, Dad. Mike had always struggled with the phantoms of his past haunting, but now all the animatronics he'd encountered for the past months haunting the pizzeria.
Okay, the crystals are going in there.
Their burned faces haunting him as he tried to keep
Where's
track
the
of
white?
his father on the cameras. It would seem that William's mere presence had put the spirits on high alert. Ultimately, they were harmless, more annoying than anything else. But there was one that felt different from the others. One that was more than just a mere phantom. A security. If he looked at the cameras at just the right moment, he could see it floating there through the holes. He could even see its reflection in the water pooled on the ground. It seemed like he wasn't the only one there on a mission. While he was dealing with Springtrap, Michael assumed that this one was likely dealing with the spirits of this place, finally setting them to rest. Hopefully this means a happier day for all of us, Mike thought to himself. And in that moment, he felt the air around him release, like pressure being let out of a bottle. The building sighed, as if 5 spirits had finally been allowed to move on. He had the sense that his brother was a part of them. He rigged the wiring inside the building to misfire, and the dry, desiccated walls erupted in flames. It is
Done. Alright, I'll touch up the black.
was
It's never done.
With sheer force of will, Afton remained. He had survived. And
Okay,
Mike
that
would find a new
one
way of finishing off
is
his father.
done.
Luckily, the solution
That
would
one is
present
done,
itself
that
later
one is
that year,
done,
not
so
for
I'm gonna
Mike,
work on
but
this
from
one
another
next.
victim that had been left in the father's wake.
We're talking about becoming a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee, restaurant ownership and management, something almost anyone can do with a limited degree of success. You are now the face of the newly rebranded Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Fazbear Entertainment as a brand has been closed for years. William had been stuck in a suit in the wall. The only person who legally could bring the franchise back was Henry, but he'd largely pulled out of the franchise around the time of his father's disappearance. Something was up. Surely this had to be some kind of a trick, right? Mike, doing what he did best, applied for a franchise and immediately got the job. There was just one thing out of the ordinary. Paragraph 4.
Green is not green enough for me. Where's the green grass? Green.
As you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something
Nope,
that
nope,
meets the
nope, nope,
criteria
nope,
of your
nope,
special
nope.
obligations under paragraph
Wait.
4.
No employment contract he'd ever signed required him to keep special lookout for independently
here it is.
moving animatronics outside the restaurant. Now he knew something was up here. Henry was luring them all back. Rather than trying to go to them, like Mike had done for years, Henry was doing the opposite. He was putting them all under the same roof. He was finishing them off for good. Mike knew this wasn't meant to be a restaurant. It was meant to be a prison. Containment vessel, a locked box meant to trap them all in so they could finally end the madness. It took a few nights, but eventually everyone was there. His father, the puppet, the robot spaghetti that had once violated his body, and his sister, now hopelessly devoted to serve the man that had once gotten her killed. It was time. He had been instructed to seal the doors and leave, but while he locked everything down, he did move on. If this was truly meant to be the end, if the remnant needed to be washed away, he needed to be a part of it.
To you, my great volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
And with that, it was over. Afton legacy died with all of them trapped inside of a literal box. As the flames danced around the office, Mike, for the first time in decades, was happy. But William wasn't gone yet. Although the darkest pit of hell was open and waiting for him, something or someone wouldn't allow him to move on. Instead, he found himself locked in moments past. The pizzeria, the son's room, his underground bunker. It was as if his brain's neurons were all firing at once, overloaded, mixing and matching all his biggest fears, regrets, failures. What was this place? How did he get here? He called out into silence.
Alright. I want to put something sparkly on you. What if I put actual sparkles?
Outdoors get more done.
At Chatter Mobile, you'll squeeze more out of your phone budget. Prepaid plans start only $19 a month. Plus, there's no commitment, no credit checks, no data overages. Visit Chatter, Canada's #1 prepaid mobile provider, in-store or online at chattermobile.com.
Modifiers muscle for the latest trends so that you don't have to.
Nope, not you.
Life's full of choices, but deciding to learn about options is easy. June is Options Education Month at TD Direct Investing. Hear from special guests and ask your questions. Register now.
I need to do these faster, or I need to stop. One of the two.
Then they started coming. Without warning, animatronics, both new and old, began to jump out at him, bite him, rip him limb from limb. The pain was immeasurable. Make it stop! Make it stop! William, for the first time, longed for death, an end to this torture. Just as it felt like he couldn't take more, everything was quiet again. It was as if the world had been reset. There was a brief moment of quiet, and then the onslaught began again. Dozens of faces from his past all focused on him. A waking nightmare that he couldn't escape from. More pain, more ripping. It was his own personal hell, but why? Why couldn't he just die? And then he saw them. A group of characters he never thought he'd see again. Those janky, stolen characters that had started everything. The mediocre melodies. It had all started to go wrong once they showed up. Once Henry had made them. But mixed in with their obnoxious southern drawls, William heard something else. It was barely a whisper, but he could just make out the words.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
1, 2, 3. Okay, that's done.
He knew that voice, but from where? The one he shouldn't have killed. William thought that. He'd done a lot of awful things, but there was always the one that stood out. Not Charlie, his drunken act of revenge. Not Susie, his first true murder. No. Instead, it was the one that he had lost control with. The one that he had broken beyond repair for no good reason other than because he could. The one that he'd stuffed inside the golden bear that his partner used to wear. They were bad. Now they were trying to punish him, to make him suffer like he made them suffer. It was almost like William and Cassidy's souls had been locked together, fused by a collective rage and spite, each refusing to move on. But while Cassidy was so focused on taking revenge, they actually did the one thing that would be the downfall for so many others. They kept William alive. Even though fire should have destroyed the remnant that was coursing through his being, Cassidy kept William breathing, paving the way for his escape. William's will was so strong, his soul so powerful that he managed to put a part of himself inside the circuitry that housed the spring-locked suit. And there, his consciousness lay, inside a single circuit board, waiting for someone to find him and set him free. A person that no one would suspect. You might have noticed that I was vague about the dates, and there's good reason for that. I don't know them. There is no good way for me to make them fit in. Here's what I do know. We know with a high amount of certainty that Michael Afton is the character that we play as up until Ultimate Custom Night. Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith, the security guards for FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 respectively, get fired for, quote, tampering with the animatronics and odor. So weird connection between the two of them, right? But now, look at the phantom animatronics that are haunting us in FNAF 3. They use models from both FNAF 1 and FNAF 2, meaning whoever is sitting in that security guard chair, Fazbear Frights, they have to have seen both locations and their animatronics. And that's not all. Their designs are burnt. It's a weird detail in the game, and it's something that the character encyclopedia repeatedly called attention to. The burnt texture for these phantom animatronics. Why is that so unusual though? Fazbear Frights is the first time in the franchise that we hear about anything burning down. From that point on of the story, it's like the characters turn pyro and they're suddenly setting fires left and right. But for the first 3 games, nothing ever catches fire. The animatronics are just moved or repurposed in some way. So when did they burn? And why would our security guards see them as being burned? Someone has to have been going location to location, setting these places on fire, purging the sins of the past. We know we're definitely playing as Mike and Sister Location in FNAF 6 based on the in-game dialogue. And in FNAF 4, there's an Easter egg where we can hear the phone call from Night 1 of FNAF 1, meaning that whoever's in that bedroom has heard the recording as a security guard. We also know that Mike has seen the nightmare animatronics based on his drawings in the security logbook. So overall, there is solid evidence that connects all of FNAFs 1 through 6. You'll also notice how the character encyclopedia doesn't have a page for Mike Afton. This thing has a page for Chocolate Bunny Bonnie, but not Michael. Some tells me they don't want us to confirm how many games he's been in, because that would confirm too much of the theory. In short, this gives us an incredibly compelling and complete narrative. Mike as our protagonist, and William, his father, as our antagonist. Mike accidentally kills his brother in Fredbear's mouth, which begins our story and sets William down his pathway of destruction. Mike is then haunted by the guilt of his past and is looking to make things right across the rest of the game. In Sister Location, he learns what his father's been up to and realizes what he has to do to correct it. After failing to finish the job in FNAF 3, he ultimately helps Henry.
1, 2, 3, 4 of these are done.
There is just one problem.
You just need your crystals.
Mike's quest can't really start until he's been down to Sister Location, seen Baby, and gotten himself scooped. That's when he finds out about Afton's secret life. Also when he's gonna start to smell, because, you know, he's a walking, talking, rotting corpse. And we know that he's not going down into the bunker until the Funtime animatronics have been made, Freddy's room closed, and Afton is out of the picture. That all should be be happening post-1993, after William is sealed behind a wall. But that then presents us with a few problems. Afton has already dismantled the original animatronics as we see in the FNAF 3 minigames. How are those things getting burned if they're already deconstructed? But more importantly, we see FNAF 2 paychecks with the date 1987. That is way earlier than I think it can be. To be fair, Fritz Smith's pink slip on night 7 doesn't have a date, but it's a bit weird to say that the first few nights are in 1987, that employee number 3 is hired on years after the restaurant closes. Fazbear Entertainment was dead.
There is no need for you to return to work next week, as Fazbear Entertainment is no longer a corporate entity.
All debts have been paid, all assets redistributed. The company was outright dissolved. Even the memories of the horrors that had happened there started to fade away in the public consciousness. The people were gone too. William was dead. Henry was gone. A whole generation of young Emilys and Aftons had lost their lives to the horrors of the pizzeria. All of them
I'm with you, Sadly.
to the man in the barn suit. Everyone the company had ever touched is dead and gone. Well, all except one.
Pay your child support, you deadbeat! I'm keeping the diamond ring. I also set the house on fire!
Clara Afton. She'd been there in the early days, back when things with William were good. They'd had the perfect home, the thriving business, the ideal family. But shortly after their youngest son died, things started to change. William had become distant, lost in his work, obsessive. She had watched him change from this irritatingly brilliant man that she had fallen in love with to a drunken monster struggling to hold himself together. And despite her trying to reach out to him in those desperate days, he was just too far gone.
Note to self, get some really good quality red fucking paint.
Admit it, you wanted to let me in.
For her sake, she had to leave the relationship. And from there, she largely faded into obscurity. A mystery from William's past. A footnote in his history. And that was fine for her. She wanted to leave that part of her life behind. She tried to move forward, never wanting to hear the name Freddy Fazbear again. A time defined by mistakes and broken promises. But then, the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate entity, suddenly her mail was flooded with notifications, requests, obligations. She had been there since the beginning, helping William in the early days of his business, and now, as a shareholder and sole living member of the Afton family, all copyrights and trademarks of both Afton Robotics and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her. Memories of this past life that she had long left behind. Looking at the blueprints, contracts, the memos, she felt old wounds begin to reopen. The regrets.
Oh no, what have I done?
William had always been brilliant. That's what had attracted her to him in the first place. But he'd also been too
Stupid.
blinded by obsession, pride. He was too jealous, too petty, too unable to actually see a bigger picture. But now, holding the paperwork that contained decades of heartbreak and trauma, she realized it was her turn. She was holding the power. This was her chance, and one thought resonated in her head. I will put them back together. I will put them all back together. She would be the one to rebuild this family, to rebuild the pieces of that shattered life, to reclaim the kids that Fazbear had stolen from her. But how? Looking at William's work now laid out before her, she knew that he had been onto something, collecting remnants, robotic humanoids, digital conscience transference. The pieces were all in place, they were just scattered, fragmented. It was almost like there were too many ideas going in too many different directions. It was such an important idea that she reiterated that point to herself. There were too many ideas going in too many different directions. That said, there had to be a way to save it all. She just needed to put it all back together. But how? To rebuild her family, she would first need to rebuild the franchise that had stolen them away from her. With ownership over the characters, the licenses, the technology patents that Fazbear needs,
Alright, enough.
back to an LLC.
Alright, I'm calling it. I got a few things kind of sort of done. There's some things I like. I like this one. And that one's gonna get some quills. That one's kind of cute. Meh, fine. Okay, unique crystals. I forgot you had a second eye for a while. And that one over there is okay. But I'm gonna call it a night. Thank you guys for stopping in. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Good night, guys.